Want to keep your dollars and cents? Then download the Sense app from the Office of Financial Readiness. That's Sense, S-E-N, money sign, E, to save for retirement, build credit, create a spending plan, or buying a home. You can't do any of those things without money. So if you have sense, you'll download the Sense app. That's S-E-N, money sign, E, today. And be sure to follow at DoD FinRed on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And welcome to the Fast Take. I'm Rod Rodriguez.
I'm Jack Murphy.
Boy, oh boy, this last episode was a project in the making. And what a lot of people don't realize about this story is that it took about a month and a half, almost two, to really pull all these stories together. And if you're a little late to the game, last episode we were talking about the Afghan evacuation, the digital Dunkirk, if you will. That was veterans coming to the aid of their Afghan allies and partners during the complete withdrawal that occurred, I believe, early this year into August. And then the bombing occurred and then everything went to hell. But that's what the last episode was. So, folks, if you haven't had a chance before you finish, before you jump into this Fast Take, make sure you go and listen to that episode. Jack, you had a chance to sit down with Nick Palmisano, which, by the way, you mispronounced it. You hacked that poor man's name. You hacked it to pieces.
Palmisciano?
Palmisciano. What is that? I thought it was Palmisciano.
Do you know that? Did you ask him?
I am 99% sure it's Palmisciano.
So maybe it's you that's all up and I got it right.
So to Nick, one of us screwed up royally and we're very sorry, but we're going to figure this out. But, you know,
it's your fault for being Italian, Nick.
You know, the thing about Nick's story that really stuck out to me was he was there on the ground. He was seeing a lot of this stuff, and he was a witness to the infamous Tim Kennedy episode, the Tim Kennedy situation. When you were talking, and much more, when you were talking with Nick, he served in Ranger Battalion, didn't he? Or was he just an infantry officer?
No, but he was an infantry officer who graduated from Ranger School.
Right. So he was one of the non-soft guys, but he still had a lot of influence and a very influential guy, very meticulous infantry officer, West Pointer, I believe. Yeah. You know, talking to him, what was your impression of his experience there, man? What were you getting from him as he was recounting the story to you?
Yeah, my impression of Nick was that he was like a lot of other veterans who saw what was going on in Afghanistan and was deeply disturbed by what he saw going on there. And like many other veterans, felt like something's got to be done. Like, I got to do something. I got to jump in and help. And it was not I don't think it was in his mind at all, this idea that like he was going to run over to Afghanistan and play Rambo or something like this. But he, through a friend of his, who had this connection to the government of the UAE, when they started reaching out and having some communication back and forth, and the UAE like offered them aircraft and resources. And now Nick and some of his crew they saw an opportunity. They saw this opportunity to now get directly involved and put their money where their mouth is, so to speak. And Nick took his shot, and his guys took their shot. They're like, this is it. This is our chance to help. And probably there wasn't a whole lot of internal deliberation, I suspect, at that point. It was like, this is it. The cards are on the table, and it's time for us to make our move. And him and the guys did that. And it sounds like they were just riding literally on pure adrenaline for like, 5 or 6 days on the ground in Kabul.
Nick talks about one of the guys was working with, losing a tremendous amount of weight because the guy was just like, listen, we don't have time to eat. I don't have time to sleep. The window is closing. I got to get as many people out of here as possible. There are numerous stories of guys just really sacrificing themselves to get this mission done.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I think it was just incredible all the way around. How they hit the ground over there, kind of liaisoned with the U.S. military, and Nick said some like soldier like looks at him and was like, "Hey, I know you from the internet."
And that's funny because a lot of people, you may not know who Nick Palmisano is by name, but if you saw a picture of him, you'd be like,
yeah.
I know this guy. That's the Ranger Up guy. He was in Range 15, I think, or Range 15 with the zombie flick with, the Article 15 guys and the Ranger Up guys.
And so Nick was playing, I think the way he described it to me, like he was playing like Battalion S3 basically. And some of the other guys, as you mentioned, were like actually going outside the wire and recovering Afghans and like bringing them through sewage tunnels at one point. I mean, it's really like wild off the wall stuff. And I'm really glad that, Nick was able to have such a candid conversation about it.
But these weren't just, and I think this is the part of the story that I don't think we really shined a light on, but I think it's an important part of that. And I'm glad we're doing the fast take, because the thing about this is these guys weren't just Joes. These weren't your typical, average. This wasn't like your, 5-year 11 Bravo. This wasn't just like a Pat clerk or your average Joe veteran who was like, oh boy, I feel bad for these Afghan people. These are guys like Chad Robichaux, who was a recon Marine, Tim Kennedy, a Special Forces Master Sergeant. Some of the guys that they were working with were ground branch guys. These are elite troops, former elite troops in some cases, but they were still deeply connected to the military. Do you think that I'm sure that had a lot to do with how they were able to integrate, but having, being a military guy myself and having, you're a former Ranger Special Forces guy, we don't necessarily like to work with civilians or even civilian organizations necessarily. But these guys were able to just kind of like plug right in. Can you give us a little insight into the relationship between the current military and these guys and their background and how they were able to just kind of like fit right in?
I think part of it was perhaps that familiarity. I'm from the internet, that they did, these people, some of these folks were publicly recognizable to the troops. I think a lot of it though was honestly that the Department of Defense was just so desperate for any help and all help that they could possibly get at that moment. And again, Nick and his guys, they saw an opportunity, they took it, and it's like, well, okay, you're here, you have airplanes, you can help. So I think the military was probably pretty receptive. But then as he told the story about the infamous Tim Kennedy incident, it sounds like maybe there were some people who were a little resentful of what they were doing there.
Well, that's the part I don't understand about this story. And I guess this is the part of the story that we're missing is the military side. Military folk, the DOD does not want to talk about this. I don't get emails back about, talking to the DOD or any aspect of it about this whole endeavor. But why did we need civilians to do this? That's the part of the story I don't understand. Why did we need civilians to show up with the help of the UAE? We have plenty of planes. We have plenty of troops. Why did we need these 12 guys to do this job?
Well, whether or not we needed them, I don't know. But I just think the added resources that like, well, this is another 12 bodies, guys who can get stuff done and another 2 aircraft or however many it was. And I mean, they needed all the resources they could possibly get at that moment. So they took it.
But we have resources. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not like they brought anything to the table that does not exist within the U.S. military's capabilities.
Well, part of it could also be perception, because as you said, we didn't have a whole lot of emails answered by the Department of Defense. But like Nick and Tim and some of those other guys are pretty out and able to talk about what they've done, which is awesome. But I know we talked about previously, Rod, like one of the kind of, I guess, a regret almost in doing these episodes is that we weren't really able to capture the active duty Marine Corps and 82nd Airborne experience and what they saw and what they did out there.
And that's absolutely right. And that whole side of the story is it's a black hole.
Yeah, it's a gap. It's something that remains to be covered. That story,
it's funny. My brain was I was trying to find a word bigger than a gap. I was trying to find a word a little more profound, because it is a huge part of the story. It's a giant part of the story, because I keep coming back to saying it, but it just doesn't make sense. Why did we need these 12 guys to evacuate 5,000 people when we have gigantic planes, we have capabilities, we have this? What was happening inside the DOD and its relationship with the State Department that tied people's hands to the point that they were looking at civilians, which, by the way, to me, that is not a good look for the DOD to say, like, we needed these 12 civilians to do this particular job because we couldn't do it. Like, that does not sit with me. That it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I don't know. I would have to know a little bit more, have a little bit more inside knowledge of the DOD effort. It seemed like they scrambled a lot of aircraft there. Could they have used more? Every commander on the ground wants more resources, right? And it was General Donahue on the ground, I believe. I'm sure he wished he had more airplanes too. I mean, every commander always does, right?
And that kind of gets us to the political side to this, which I'll speak directly to our guest on this matter. I'm the guy who edits these shows. I go in, I take the interviews, and I put the interview together in a narrative story to be able to tell the story of what's happening in a kind of faster paced and trying to get it into an hour. And I respect every one of our guests' opinions, but there are parts of this that do get political. In this show, we try not to get political. I try very hard to tell the story without diving too far left, too far right, or giving opinions about the current administration, past administrations, because some of the stuff, despite and I respect Chad and Nick and Scott Mann, I respect all of their opinions and believe what you want to believe about whoever you want to believe it about, but we can't. I took those parts out of the stories. I took those political opinions, and I know Chad, for example, was very passionate about how he felt about where some of this blame lied. But it is an inescapable aspect of the story about the administration, how it handled this particular situation. I get it.
I don't know if you've listened to the interview I did with Scott Mann yet, Rod.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But he has. He doesn't have, I don't think, a partisan political critique, but he is critical of the State Department and how they handled the situation.
We're treating the Taliban as a legitimate government.
Right. After
20 years of proselytizing to the world that they were not a legitimate government, that they were that we had helped the Afghan people establish a legitimate government, and then it's like, you hit the clock, the stopwatch, the timer, and you're like, hey, by the way, you have a year before they come back, folks. Very sorry, but we tried. It's time to go. That's the part that I think sits hard with Chad and the other folks that Save Our Allies, is that they were out there. They were fighting the Taliban alongside these Afghan allies of theirs. And they didn't even qualify for the visa program, which, I know the visa story at the beginning is not as juicy or as interesting as maybe veteran saving Afghan allies. But the reason we preceded that episode with this quick story about the visa program was because it is such a testament to what was wrong with the entire Afghan-American relationship, that process. I mean, it was an understaffed, poorly run State Department effort that I think foreshadowed the NEO operation.
The SIVs are one part of it, but also P1 and P2 visas was I think what most of the Afghans actually fell under. But listen, anyone who's been through the immigration system, like lawful immigration to the United States, I have been married to foreign citizens. I'll just leave it at that for the sake of this podcast. But suffice to say, going through the immigration process lawfully and doing the right thing, it's a huge pain in the ass for a normal person. So I can't even imagine the hell that these Afghans went through. The system is broken across the board for anyone. And being a political refugee, I mean, it's got to be that much more insane.
I could not believe that very quick footnote that we talked about in the show about the people that the IG had been interviewing about the SIV program that were like, oh, that position's been vacant for like a year, and nobody knew who was supposed to be there, or even if it was two positions, was it one position? That's insane to me. That's crazy. I cannot fathom not knowing what the hell your program is doing. I mean, I look at the commercial sector and I just look at like Elon Musk. I look at SpaceX. I look at these, Blue Origin, whatever. And I'm like, if we took a hard look, would it be this screwed up? Or is it just the bureaucracy of the American government? Is it this GS nonsense? Is it just, I don't know. It just seems like there's so much broken. And Afghanistan was just a battleground where it was almost like bureaucratic Armageddon occurred.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the situation that Nick laid on me is kind of like night and day by comparison to the social media narrative about what supposedly Tim did out there. Mm-hmm. I think Nick was pretty candid about it. Said, Tim Kennedy takes a lot of heat and he brings a lot of that on himself. The kind of stuff he writes on social media, it's like, wow, this guy seems like a jackass. And maybe he's a good person deep down, but he portrays himself as an ass clown sometimes on social media. And look, I'm sorry, Tim. I mean, you have to. You're a grown man. You got to think about these things a little bit because people on the internet will not be nice. But that said,
but at the same time, I've never heard Tim come out and be like, "Hey, you guys are being mean." I've never really heard Tim fight the narrative that he's kind of a jackass. I think he's the first person to admit, like, oh yeah, I do weird and crazy stuff because it gets the clickies.
Attention.
It gets attention, gets the clicks. Those clicks are helping him pay for this life that he lives. And, you're a UFC fighter, probably a different mentality, a former UFC fighter.
Yeah.
But
I get it.
I think it's one of those situations where if you want to be mad at Tim, be mad at that he did,
not stuff he didn't do,
not stuff that he didn't do, or stuff that you don't understand happened. And we were hearing Nick's side. I don't know the other side. Again, like we couldn't get this colonel. We couldn't get other people to talk to us about it.
Right. And journalistically speaking, I'll say this. I mean, Nick has gone on the record with his side of the story. Tim Kennedy he's posted on social media his side of the story, so he's gone on the record. These anonymous Instagram accounts that have a lot of shade to throw on Tim Kennedy about what he supposedly did in Afghanistan, none of them are on the record. None of them are coming forward with their real names and saying their piece and saying this is what I saw. So as a journalist, I tend to lean towards the verified sources rather than anonymous social media accounts.
And the thing you have to understand is we were just kind of talking about this on the pre-show, hypocrisy that it kind of exists in the soft world where, if you're a quote unquote spotlight ranger, you're going to be heavily chastised. You're not really one of them. You're not really one of the guys. And a lot of folks look at Tim and they're like, well, you're Master Sergeant, United States Army, Special Forces. Why are you making these videos? Why are you in the spotlight? Why are you doing all these goofy things? And you're just you're an attention guy. That's all you are. but he's also a reservist. He
Right.
does that 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year. I feel like, well, you tell me, does that make a difference? Should that make a difference in how he handles himself as a Green Beret, whether it matters if he's in the reserve or the active duty?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not sure if it's for me to say, especially considering what I do. There are a lot of people who think that because I was once in the military 11 years ago now, that I should not be writing the, journalistic pieces, that I should not be, in their words, airing dirty laundry at times. That because I once wore the uniform, that I have this like veil of silence that I need to maintain for the rest of my life. And I think there are a lot of unwritten rules that people have in the back of their minds about what's the right way to be a veteran. And it relies a lot on, it relies a lot on groupthink, that you're not supposed to do what the community thinks is wrong. But what are the community, the quote unquote, the community, what are their rules, written and unwritten, spoken and unspoken? No one really knows. It's just sort of what a bunch of social media personalities have to say that day. We're in our private Facebook group. Fuck this guy, fuck that guy. Okay. Well, that's just your opinion, man.
So we did talk a lot about, and I highly encourage people to go listen to Nick's recounting of what happened with that situation. And that also doesn't sit well with me. 5 buses full of people, children, orphans, some orphans. I believe he said that there were some American passport holders that were turned away.
Yeah, he did.
Because,
and if that is indeed what happened, I mean, that sounds perhaps even criminal to me, if not criminally negligent, all over ego, just because they're having a measuring contest out there on the tarmac of the airfield. If some of those people could not come to the United States because their paperwork was not in order, I mean, I feel for them and I'm sorry, but I understand there's rules. But if you're taking passport holders and green card holders and saying, sorry, you shouldn't have gotten on the Tim Kennedy bus, fuck you, that's not okay. That's not okay at all.
That's not okay. I mean, it's absolutely insane that we would turn away American passport holders because you came on a bus with a guy that I don't like his antics on Facebook. Like,
right.
Look, man, I have a passport. Don't judge me on this man's TikTok videos. I just want to go home. The other part to that was kind of crazy was, again, we kind of go back to the green suitor side of the story. And this might have been a full-bird colonel. This could be whoever it was, might be under investigation. Folks, if you're and this is part, like, I want to talk to some of these service members. I want to talk to some of the Marines.
Hit the tip line.
Hit the tip line. That's MilitaryMatters at stripes.com. We will, I want to hear your story. I know there are Marines that are going through a tough time right now. Mm-hmm. They saw some horrible things. And you know what? I think part of it is they may not feel entitled to being okay with their part in it. Like, hey, I was a young Marine. It was my first thing I ever did. I was never in Afghanistan. I didn't fight the Taliban. I guarded a gate. In their head, they're thinking, that's all I did. And they might even feel guilty about feeling bad about the shit they saw. I know guys that have been in firefights, numerous deployments, and they are like, no, it's not. It's okay. It's fine. I'm okay. I mean, other people had it worse. And it's like, no, that's not the point. Like, that's not how this works.
Yeah, I mean, I know badass JSOC guys who like read accounts from like Vietnam and World War II, and like, man, I didn't have it bad at all. I didn't see shit compared to these guys. It's always, always looking in the rearview mirror like that. But, whatever you did in the military, if you were one of those guys out on the airfield in Afghanistan, I mean, it's okay to like not be cool with some of the things you saw. And just some of the stories I've heard from talking to people there, like, dude, some of the stuff you guys witnessed was fucked up, man, and it's not okay. And, if it bothers you, it's okay to go get help and talk to somebody about it.
And if you saw something, if it's a whistleblower situation, for sure, take your appropriate measures. But if you want to talk to us, I'm more than happy to hear your story and talk about it, because my spidey sense says something was wrong with a lot going on there.
I think it was just chaos on the ground. Yeah.
Chaos. Absolute chaos. But I mean, you kind of go back to that Tim Kennedy situation. Like, if somebody's turning away buses full of American passport holders,
something's wrong.
Something's wrong here. Like, what's really, if that was, what's the saying? Like, if you see one thing, there's probably 20 things you didn't see.
Where there's smoke, there's fire.
Or, dumpster fire in this case. So the next episode, we're going to be talking with Scott Mann and your interview with
Mick Mulroy.
Was it Mick or Nick?
His real name is Michael, but his nickname is Mick Mulroy, because he's an Irish lad. Served as a CIA paramilitary operations officer and was involved in the what do they call it? Digital Dunkirk was the endeavor he was involved in.
So this last episode, we kind of took you to Afghanistan, and these are guys that were on the ground getting, physical flights, getting people into buses, getting them turned away, getting them onto planes, getting them home, getting them to the UAE or wherever they were going. The next part of the story is really about the guys here stateside. What we don't hear about are these veterans, whether they were soft, conventional, whatever. These are veterans that turned their kitchens into talks. These are guys that were on the phone, falling asleep with phones on their chest, buzzing, and in some cases, hearing in real time people they knew not make it, get turned away. And this is where we kind of, the birth of Pineapple kind of comes into play. This is a very powerful account from Scott Mann. Tell us a little bit about Scott, Jack.
Scott Mann is a former Green Beret officer. He was one of the minds behind the Village Stability Operation program in Afghanistan, as I recall. He also is the writer and actor. I mean, he's something of a playwright and an actor now, with his play called The Last Out, Elegy of a Green Beret, which I have seen actually in person in New York City, off Broadway. It's an amazing play that tells a special forces story better than anything I've ever seen before. Scott's the real deal. No one cares more than he does. He's just a very interesting person all around. And when it came to this Afghan situation, he was another one who jumped in with both feet, trying to help, trying to get something done. And, I got him to kind of tell his whole story about it. And Mick Mulroy, same thing, but on the CIA side. So for people who don't understand, the CIA worked with the Afghan intelligence service called NDS, and they had their own paramilitary forces that were all over the country. So it's like Afghan special forces guys. So the CIA and former CIA personnel were likewise very involved in getting their guys out of country.
And that is next week, folks. So make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you're sharing this podcast. We exist through word of mouth primarily. So make sure you're talking to folks about this. Share this episode. And the last thing I want to touch on is, this Afghan situation is far-reaching. We talked about it during our discussion about the fall of Afghanistan, the embassy. We talked to an intelligence contractor who had just arrived. That's a couple episodes back. It's still a hot-button issue. I know a lot of people who are still conflicted about how they feel about Afghanistan, about the things that happened there, this feeling that we did it for nothing. And then on top of it now, we have veterans who left, they came back, veterans who stayed here and were, I would say, re-traumatized, brought back into a world they thought they had forgotten. Folks, if you need help, get help. There's no shame in it. Nothing. Everybody's experience is going to be relative to the person, your baseline experience. You don't have to be a JSOC dude to have trauma. You don't have to be a special forces guy to have seen or been in a situation that traumatized you. That's not how this works. I'm not basing my experiences off of whatever Jack went through. That's insane. Different people, different experiences. Don't give up. Make sure that you get help. Talk to somebody. Stripes at MilitaryMatters at stripes.com. I mean, hell, if even you just want to talk for 15 minutes, I'm here for you too. So, Jack, you got anything else for us?
No, I think that's it. I mean, next episode is going to be pretty wild too. So see you guys next time with that.
That's right. And we're about to finish up the season, man. This is we're right there. It's almost game over for season 3. And very excited.
Is this season 3 or season 4?
I think it's season 4. I think you're right.
It's season 4, man.
Wow. Time flies. Well, let's see if you make it to season 5, where I might do like a voting thing. Like, are we keeping Jack or not? I might replace you with a dog. People love dogs, dude. People love dogs. They get clicks.
I think we can replace Rod with a AI that can probably do your job and
do it better.
Yeah.
I do not want to. I don't want to compete with AI. Folks, don't vote me off the island, for the love of God.
I'm not talking about like a punch card computer. I mean like a real AI, like, you know,
a
proper AI.
Is that supposed to be flattering? Like, no. You didn't get replaced by this calculator, by this Texas Instruments.
Yeah.
You got replaced by a legit computer. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's better.
You know, you're getting replaced by the kiosk.
Mister, please, my babies, they need food. They need diapers. Do not do this to Rod. All right, guys. That was a horribly racist impression of somebody or something. Don't write in about that. All right, folks. I'm Rod Rodriguez. That was Jack Murphy. We're gonna go ahead and sign off before getting more trouble. We will see you at the next episode. Did you know that the Office of Financial Readiness has an app? Download Sense app. That's SEN $E. Sense app has the information you need for saving for retirement, building credit, creating a spending plan, or buying a home. FinRed has the tools you need. Download Sense app for tips on the go and follow at DoD FinRed on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.